Howdy Makers Church. This is Testimony Tuesday. I'm Pastor Glenn.
And I'm Mark, and no, we haven't all fallen into the movie Groundhog Day, where we keep reliving the same Testimony Tuesday week after week. This is actually a brand new one, and part two of our doubleheader with James, and we are thrilled that James is back. James, thank you so much for coming back. It's great to have you. We're really excited to talk with you again today.
I'm happy to have stepped in for the person who canceled, so no big deal. I've got plenty of time, so my pleasure.
Mark, that isn't true. We didn't have somebody that canceled. The truth is that after last week's interview with James, where we heard about how God supernaturally transformed James from a hillbilly into a millennial hipster, that was just too good to believe. And so we had to come back. Now that said, James is the community groups and our prayer teams director here at Makers. So last week we were kind of looking at how God brought James to Makers. And this week we're going to be looking at now and in the future. And so we wanted to hear more about James's vision for prayer and also for community groups. So James, let's start with prayer. We know that you had a significant experience. Well, why don't you tell us about that significant experience where this event in Ohio where you, well, go ahead. Take it away, James.
Yeah. So, I mentioned to you guys that this was kind of my inciting incident into prayer, right? I demystified it a little bit for me. Where I used to work at Crossroads, we used to have what we call man camp. So this was about 5 years ago. And you'd have about 3,000 guys who would come together on a campground that Crossroads purchased. The vision for this was Brian Tome, the senior pastor, is a big motorcycle dirt bike kind of rider. And on these trips he would take with guys, they would have these amazing discussions around a campfire. And they said, we want to take that to the church. So they started this with the men in the church, and now they do woman camp, father-son camp, couples camp. It's amazing. So they bought a huge plot of land. So anyway, to paint the picture for you, there's this huge, kind of area, tented area where the senior pastor gives a talk. And then we go back to our campsites where we collect wood. We sleep in tents. This is not glamping. This is in, Southeast Ohio. So, so you're in tents, you're chopping wood to get for your fire. And you have this discussion around a fire. It's guided. But on top of that, there's also what is known to be quite a substantial line for the beer. So they do have beer and wine available. So they have kegs, and there's a huge line for the kegs. And you can only, I'm not an expert, but you can only pump so fast. Okay. So, so there's a bit of a line that gets created, and Crossroads strategically put the beer line and the kegs next to what was called the mash tent. And the mash tent is where you could go and receive prayer. There were people praying for you, available for prayer. This is like about a 48-hour event. There were people there on call for prayer for 48 straight hours. So what would happen is you would be waiting in line. You're like, man, I kind of want to wait in this line. I'm going to burn. You can't go to Dick's Sporting Goods to be like, hey, let's go look at the baseball equipment. It's just like, hey, let's go to the prayer tent. Let's go get some prayer, So you go get some, so that's what happened. So I went and, I went and got some prayer, and there was nothing like specific on my mind, but Brian Tome had given a talk earlier that day about just stepping up as a man. He was speaking specifically to those of us in a relationship. And at that time I was just dating Gabriella, and, he essentially in so few words said like, hey, kind of get at it or get out. It's time to make that commitment, stop negotiating, and, lock it up, because that's what God would want you to do. There's going to be a blessing for you if you lock in marriage. I guarantee you that. God guarantees you that. And so I went into the prayer tent with that, got some prayer over it, and man, it was awesome. And, that was, I proposed to Gabrielle just a couple months after that. So anyway, for me, that was the inciting incident to say, if you can have a prayer experience in the middle of just an outside roughing it, guys in line for the beer kegs, camping, cooking, little sausage links over the fire, you can do prayer anywhere. right?
Yeah.
So anyway, so that, you know, and actually I keep this coin here with me. So I keep this coin, I would say 3 out of 7 days a week. Don't let me overstate it, but you get a coin every time you go to a man camp, and I keep this coin with me. And it's just a way that if you're ever with a guy who goes to man camp and you pull out your coin, whoever doesn't have theirs has to buy the next round. So, you know, it's a little game. I don't think anybody here in California is going to have this coin, so I'm always going to win. But anyway, you know, so it was an amazing experience, one of a kind, and one of those things that literally I took that experience with me to every scenario, you know, in my life after that.
Yeah.
So,
That just sounds like just your perception on what it means to receive prayer kind of changed. And I know that when it comes to prayer, you also have a great phrase. I know that kind of describes the overall vision at Makers. And so tell us what that phrase is and how you'd like to see that phrase lived out at Makers.
Yeah, you know, so for me, and this is an example from that experience, right? Prayer is a practice, not a program.
Yeah.
Right. And in that scenario, prayer was practiced at man camp. Yeah. Man camp is a big evangelical type of experience to bring in people who may not know Jesus, and you implement practices within it. Right. Yes. And I'm someone who doesn't love to over-engineer things. I think things through, I hope, for the most. Derek, I don't know if Derek's around, but I don't know if he would agree. I think a lot of things through, but I don't overthink them, right? Yeah. And so for me, you know, even just thinking about how did I take prayer kind of into my daily life? I've not been one who prays before every meal. It feels too, you know, programmatic to it's just not was the thing that turned the corner for me, you know? So I had different practices that made sense for me that then helped demystify what it meant to, you know, I made the joke with you guys before about if you've seen Meet the Parents and Greg is praying before their meal. It's just the most awkward prayer. But I feel all of us could be like that in a scenario, right? Where we're like, hey, will you pray for us? And you're like, yeah, Father of the holiest high God. You know, like we're just not all in that zone. Right. Yeah. So, you know, for me, that's where I was. And I just came up with practices that worked for me. So, you know, and I've got a few examples of those. Like, I think we've talked for like a pace list, right? Yeah. Someone told me this practice, right? It wasn't something I went and learned at like prayer camp. Yeah. You know, you don't go to prayer camp, right? So this is something someone told me, right? They said, hey, you remember how when you're a little kid and you brush your teeth and you sing happy birthday and then you're done, right? You say, well, what this person does is they either write it on their mirror in their bathroom or they use Post-it notes, and it's your pace list. It's people that you're praying for. So the thing that this person told me that really turned the corner was start by praying for other people if you're not sure where to start, right? Yeah. And this is just people that are popping into your mind. You know, I even looked back, you know, before today, I looked back. Glenn knows I use this app as well, right? It's called the Echo Prayer app. I actually looked back. I've had 168 answered prayers on this app. Wow. Now, don't let me make it sound like it was 168 prayers of Jesus, give me $3,000 so I could pay my rent next month. Okay, so that's not what it is, right? If you went through and looked at it, mostly they're just people's names or their meetings, you know? And now this is over 5 years. I did the math. That means I've had an answer. Think about this, an answered prayer every 12 days just on this app, right? Well, like I said, those are for meetings, interactions, conversations. I just put the littlest things in there. You know, and to me, that's really what God would consider to be obedient, and it really helps me grow closer to Him in my every single day. So
beautiful.
Yeah. Because I just love that, just about this being ready to pray anytime. You know, whether just getting into the habit of that too, in terms of on a phone call with someone. You know, rather than just saying, well, I'll remember to pray for you. Just pray then. You know, pray there over the phone. Pray. You know, when you're you know, if you, in the days when you could kind of go out to the, you know, grocery store or something, and you could just were limited by social distancing, but just, you know, pray there in the parking lot, you know, with someone. You know, it's unbelievably powerful. I know when people have prayed for me like that, it's unbelievably powerful. So, and also tell us about there's something coming up in November regarding prayer.
The week of prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
Oh, because here's the thing. So even though I don't like to over-engineer things, we all still need to be moving. We need to create momentum together, right? So we can build individual practices, but we need to be moving in the same direction together. And something like a week of prayer and fasting will really help do that. So we're going to have that the first week of November. There's going to be 3 core experiences. I won't go into detail because you're going to learn these, pretty soon. But it's essentially, we're going to be praying for the other. We're going to learn how to pray for one another, and we're going to be praying for us as a church, right? Our vision and goals for 2021. Learn how to pray with one another in groups and smaller settings, and also how we should be keeping the other in mind, and that's people who don't know Jesus. So we're going to focus on those 3 things during the week of prayer and fasting, and it's going to be dope.
Yeah, and I know too, you were telling us that one of the goals too is just to be praying, with more boldness and be praying just in a much more specific way too, just encouraging us to pray. If you want a great book on boldness with prayer, and boldness can come in different forms. For me, boldness is in specificity. Mm-hmm. When I make a specific request of someone, I believe that that's honored in a big way, because they know. Because here's a piece of advice that was told me even just recently, that the biggest thing that you can learn in this type of setting is learn what you want and then learn how to ask for it. Right. So for me, a lot of that comes into prayer of like, here's what I need. Here's what I want. And I've got to learn how to ask for that specifically. There's a great book by Mark Batterson. It's a pastor out of DC called The Circle Maker. Yes. And he talks a lot about putting a circle, and he has this whole analogy, but essentially what he does in that book is talk about specific, bold prayers because God wants to answer them, right? He wants to answer them. So, anyway, be specific, right? If you're running short on cash, how much cash are you running short on? God, I need $426. I see these prayers just coming in from our community about your career or your marriage. I would love to hear man, help me with my marriage because I'm not getting through to my spouse, right? Or I feel as if I'm being a bad listener. Those types of things help us move forward. It invites God into it in a much more intimate way because he wants to do that. So anyway, right. I got to slow down and preach. No, that's good. and Glenn, you were going to ask, I think, about
this is
how that happens.
This is near and dear to my heart because we've been praying for years. In fact, I remember when that book first came out years ago, Circle Maker. Glenn and I were listening to it online when we were coming back from vacation, and I was so convicted. It was just you're right. It was a great and troublesome book because I was just praying these general prayers of God bless the world and stuff like that. And so that whole making a circle was really cool. But James, tell us, we are making a shift right now for how people can receive prayer. We prided ourselves on, if somebody in the church or even somebody outside of the church needs prayer, we are there 24/7. And so you've come up with some exciting new ways that people can connect with the prayer team. Obviously, we want to pray for people more in the moment, but we also have people that have the gift of intercession that really want to pray. And so, James, tell us how can, if you're sitting there listening to this and man, I need prayer, be bold. Do what James is about to tell you. So what's the ways that you can get prayer here?
One is to share it with somebody already in your relational circle. It's going to be uncomfortable. It really will be, but that has got to be a thing. Now, if that's not where you are, or you need more people like us who want to step into what Glenn said, there's a few different ways that you can do it. You can text in Maker's Prayer to 97000, right? All those keywords. If you text in a prayer request, you will get instant prayer right there. Maker's Prayer to 97000.
So let me clarify that. So for people that aren't used to texting, so where you normally put the phone number in, that's where you put the 97000. And then after that, James, you're saying you have to have the word Maker's Prayer, and then you follow that with the actual prayer request.
Yes.
And so what happens when you do that?
Someone's going to pray for you right then and there, and they're going to respond. 24/7.
There you go.
Awesome. Yeah. And they're going to, because the model that we're moving towards is ask, seek, and knock.
Okay.
Right? This ask, so ask and you shall receive. Right? If you ask for prayer, you are going to receive it. That is our responsibility as a church, and you will get that. Right? And then from there, some different things that we're doing. Like I said, knock is more in the week of prayer and fasting. Right? Seek is what you were alluding to, Glenn. We're like, hey, I want to pray for the world, or pray for my career, or pray for my marriage. We're actually going to try to step in with you and say, hey, Glenn, we want to invite you in a conversation with somebody on our prayer team who wants to unpack that with you. If you're comfortable with that, we want to make ourselves available more than just, technology is great. It's great for asking, right? But if you need somebody to help you dive into that, because, for me, any feeling left unfelt never goes away. And a lot of times in prayer, especially, we just have these feelings and we're just not sure what to do with them, right? And we'll hold on to them, but any feeling left unfelt will never go away. And we want to give you space to feel that through, right? And that's where our prayer team can step in. So
powerful. And then what other, go ahead, Mark.
Go ahead. No, I was going to say the same thing. Yeah. And what other way? I know there's an online form is there, and also email.
Yeah. If you're on the website, makerschurch.org, there's a prayer link. You can submit that through the prayer, and that will come instantly to our prayer team as well. And we'll pray for you and you'll get a response right away. There's a bunch of different, like I said, texting, email. You can email anybody at Makers, any person that you have their email for, just email them. And they know that they'll send that to us. They'll send that to the prayer team. And you'll get prayer right away. It doesn't go to the cloud. Your prayer gets received. So.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Well, I think that's really helpful. Let's change gears because I know, as always, time catches up with us. And let's look at the other hat that you wear at Makers, that of being director of the community groups. So just tell us why it is that you're such a passionate believer in small groups, and just what the vision is for how the community groups might look at Makers in the future.
Yeah, so just like prayer, start with the other, right? Always start with someone else. Same thing with groups. Groups are hard. Meeting in groups is really, really, really hard, right? We've all been a part of one that was like, meh, I don't know about this,
Don't scare people away, James.
Sir. Candor, right? Candor. Let's be honest, right? We've dipped our beaks in it, and it was like, I don't know about that, So, and I think the big reason why is because we will create an environment that's built around logistics and not around people. Right? So when I think about how Jesus, and this is how I'll summarize this, when I think about how Jesus did groups, right? The traditional is Jesus and the disciples. Doesn't tell the full story. Doesn't even tell a quarter of the story, right? Jesus had 72, right? That came along with him, that he gathered and taught. Then he had 12 that he actually built spiritual disciplines into. But then he had 3 that he followed up with and showed them what it meant to obey. Right? So there's kind of 3 layers to it. So the vision for groups that's coming out in different ways here in the next couple months is going to be, if you want to lead a group, do you want to be gathering people so they can listen to teaching like Jesus did with the 72? Do you want to gather people so that you can help them build spiritual disciplines like Jesus did with the 12? Or do you want to get a tighter group of people together so then you can learn what it means to be obedient and aggressively be made into a disciple and make disciples, right? And then the other way around, when you want to participate in the group based on your life, do you want to come in and just be able to listen and hear teaching in a way that's around other people? Great. Do you want to learn spiritual disciplines, how to read the Bible, how to discern, how to unpack scripture, how to pray, those types of things? Great. We've got groups for that. Or do you want, I need relationship. I need day in and day out relationship. So it's kind of those calls to action. Those are the things that we're lining up with community groups. And we're starting to roll that out with Ministry Basics. We started this month where we're just going to be teaching, what does it mean to lead and be led by someone spiritually? We're going to be doing those every month. And then, we've got a few other things coming down the pike, but that's the alignment that we want.
Let me jump in here. As I look back on my life, all 3 of those things have had huge impacts. I mean, as a pastor, I came to believe, if somebody was hurting and somebody needed anything spiritually, the best place to put them was a group of some sort. That was where the real spiritual action took place. So me hearing you say this is awesome. But I also remember meeting with 4 guys at 6 in the morning every Thursday, Oh my goodness. And I'm not a morning person. That was horrible. But on the other hand, looking back, that was when I was a younger Christian, that was the most impactful thing I think that's happened in my life spiritually. So
yeah,
it's great. It's great
so
what you're talking about.
there's the ministry basics, which would have begun last Saturday, and obviously we can kind of check those things out, I think, on video. Also, you mentioned as well something that I loved about the fact that it's also as a group thinking, in whose life do I want to make a difference? Maybe you could just talk to that for a second or two. It's about having that outward, how do I want to make an impact? Whose life do I want to impact outside of the group? And that can kind of determine how a group is formed, right?
Yeah, well, and it's, think, and this is jostling. Admittedly, even as I've shared with this is a jostling way to think about this, right? Traditionally, we create groups or join groups because we want relationship. And we want connection. There is nothing wrong with that. It's very, very biblical, okay?
Yeah.
However, our mission at Makers is the Great Commission, which involves focusing on people who don't know Jesus, right? So when it comes to wanting to create community, who are you creating community for? You or others, right? And for us to grow and expand God's kingdom, we've got to be thinking about who is it that our group can reach? Who role can they play and how can they say yes, right? There's times and spaces to have insular activity. As long as that insular activity whips out into this tornado of an outward focus, right? That's what we've got to be doing. And that's what we're just going to be pounding and pounding and pounding when it comes to groups is who are you trying to reach, right?
Wow.
So
that's awesome. That is fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, really good.
All right, cool. Call it a day. Yeah, see you guys later.
Actually, how are we doing on time? I haven't been even watching, so.
22 minutes in already.
All right, yeah.
We crushed it.
Yeah. So, what other things, and anything else as we start to kind of wrap up here, James? Anything else? Any other kind of final thoughts? Anything else that we haven't kind of
and what about, how do you do groups? How are we doing groups now in the midst of all the COVID stuff?
Yes.
Are we Zooming meetings? How are people meeting and socially distanced? What's it look like now?
Yeah, we've got a roadmap. And one thing I want to make sure everybody hears when it comes to prayer and groups is this is a roadmap. I'm preaching destination, but understanding that there are markers along the way, right? And just like groups, right? We've got some groups who are just meeting over Zoom, but honestly, that's tough to join as a newcomer, or if you don't know those people, right? You're in a group for 60 minutes and there's 8 of you, so you all get 3 minutes of airtime. Not quite really the place to create connection, right? So those groups are doing great because they're still even trying to meet, right? They're doing it. So well done, great job, right? And then you've got some hybrid groups, right, that are meeting in parks. So those are available online. And then now we're starting to bring groups back into the building into a safe way, and those are available online. Now, if you're not ready to join one of those, because COVID is all over the map, who knows where we're going to be in a month? Who knows? We may have to pull people out of the building, but you know what? God's given us an inch, and we're going to take that inch. So we're going to bring people safely back in the building. But if that inch gets taken away from us, right, we're going to back it up. We're going to back it up. So I would say that for any family or person or individual, start building a rhythm of protected space, right? So like every Thursday, you have space that you could say yes to something. So then when that opportunity comes across, you'll say yes, right? So start thinking about that right now. And then when an opportunity comes up, you can say yes. But if you want to join a group, there's plenty available online that are meeting in different scenarios. And also, if you want to start one, you don't have to be some ordained, priest to start a group. Here's the thing. You want to know the secret? Who can start a group? You've accepted Jesus as your savior, and you're trying to pursue what it means to be more like him. Yes. Boom. Those are your two, okay? So, and you know what it takes to start a group? A designated leader and someone following them. Not 12. Designated leader, someone following them, looking to reach the other. That's it, right? So if you want to do that, reach out to me. We'll get you. We've had 4 groups get started just this week.
Beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, God. James, bless your heart. Thank you just for joining us today. Thank you for all you're doing. Just thank you for just your heart, your passion, just your vision, and all you're doing just to glorify the name of God, the name of Jesus through prayer, through community groups. Thank you. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Before I say goodbay, we were pre-interviewing James about this man camp. That thing is so fascinating. He was telling me, telling Mark and I that you had to hike in to this man camp. It wasn't just you park and then you walk a few feet. You had to hike in, and you know, some people were having problems, and you had to. I think you mentioned there's like this overweight guy you were pushing up the hill and stuff like that. And I can picture myself being in camp as a kid doing the same thing. But that's what James does, is, you know, he's going to help you either through prayer or through the small groups. He's going to help you get up that hill. And James, I love your passion for that, for others. For those that don't even know Jesus right now, what a privilege it is to have you here. So we're going to say goodbye right now. God bless you. We've been praying, and thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Take care.